Today is June 2nd, 2023, the unofficial start of summer, so you see me dressed up in my summer garb. And this week, the world was focused on the U.S. debt ceiling debate. So from Saskatchewan to Sydney, the question was, can the U.S. be trusted to pay its bills? Hi, this is Jeff Goldfinger. Welcome to the 14th episode of the STEM Signal, where we help the STEM educated learn how to keep their career signal above the workplace noise. Now, let's get down to business. All right, so if you can tell from the opening, today's lesson is going to be about trust. The title is called Trust Your Ears. And again, we see in all capitals word there, that's a mnemonic for the 4 observable attributes that you can use to quickly build trust. So why is trust so important if we're looking to increase our STEM signal? Well, Zig Ziglar, the famous motivational speaker and sales trainer, said if people like you, they will listen to you, but only if they trust you will they do business with you. So what does it mean to be trusted? Statista does a statistically significant survey of people around the world looking for the most and least trusted people in the world. Now you'll notice the blue is the most trusted, the yellow is the least trusted. The thing that I notice about these two demographics is that the folks in blue tend to be people that we don't actually interact with very often. You know, we may visit our doctor a few times a year. We hardly ever run into scientists, except those of us in the STEM educated domain. Teachers, once we graduate, we don't interact unless we have kids, and then only a few times a year. Yet the folks in yellow, we tend to see on a daily basis, right? Journalists, we go to our bank very often. Physical banks, probably not so much anymore with the digital currency. Ad execs, government ministers, and politicians in general tend to be the least trustworthy. You can throw probably car salesmen in there as well. So what we notice from all of that is there's an existing prejudice of trust or distrust. And distrust is the default position because of all of this. So the key question to ask yourself is, can you be trusted? And then how would you know you can be trusted? By the way, anybody, have you ever done one of these exercises? I have from ground level. This looks even scarier. So the question though is, how would you know you can be trusted? And for this, I turn to my mentor, Dr. Fernando Flores. I've mentioned him before in other lessons. His seminal collection of work is called Conversations for Action and Collected Essays. Chapter 8 in that book is appropriately titled On Trust. And in that chapter, he goes through 4 key attributes for trustworthiness. So I'm going to use 2 real-world businesses in my personal life to help highlight those 4 attributes. The first is Dr. Tony Hatch, seated here in red. He was my dentist. This is his dental practice, Scripps Rock Dental in San Diego. Then we have Honest One Auto Care in Virginia, where I used to live. And that's where I would take my car to if I needed a trustworthy place to fix my car. Now, notice the name, Honest One Auto Care. That should tell you something about the default position of distrust when it comes to auto mechanics. But be that as it may, these were 2 trustworthy institutions. And if somebody moved to San Diego and said, do you have a trustworthy dentist that you bring your teeth to? And I'd say, absolutely, Scripps Rock Dental. And then if somebody moved to Virginia, hey, do you have a trustworthy mechanic I can bring my car to? Absolutely. I bring my car to Honest One Auto Care. Now, do I trust my dentist to work on my car? Or even more strangely, would I ever trust my mechanic to work on my teeth? No. So you can already tell that trustworthiness is not some binary moral character trait. Somebody's not either trustworthy or not trustworthy, right? It's in the domain of action that you want to declare. So let's talk about the 4 attributes that let us look at what makes a trustworthy individual or organization. The first has to do with something you notice and observe immediately upon arrival. So this is what I found when I pulled up to Scripps Rock Dental. They were in an upscale strip mall with a manicured lawn, and they had freshly painted parking spots. The facade looked like a dental office. When I walked inside, the lobby looked like a dental office. They had equipment that looked like a dental office. So I called that engaged. The first attribute of trustworthiness is engagement. Now contrast that if I had pulled up and found something like this. A rented trailer from Mobile Mini with a sign Dentists R Us on top of it. I probably wouldn't think that they were engaged in the business of dentistry. As an example of this, I was just listening to an interview with John Travolta, the famous actor, and he was talking about how he got ready for the part in Saturday Night Fever, his big late 70s hit about the disco dance craze. And he was asked, how did he prepare for the dancing in that? And he spent 9 months with a dance instructor learning how to dance. That's a demonstration of engagement in the career called acting. And if you listen to other actors, they will tell you they spent, I was listening to a different one the other day. They were talking about Sean Penn and how in his role for the movie Colors, he spent months riding along with cops in LA. And so he engaged, that's his engagement in the practice of acting. All right, so that's the first attribute. The second attribute is also something we tend to see and observe in one aspect, and it's also something we get a sense of based on over time. So the first thing we look at is here we have a mechanic who has an Automotive Service Excellence Patch, an ASE certification, and that tells me that they have the ability to work on my car. So the second attribute is ability. In a dentist office, we might find a certificate up on the wall. In typical professions, right? Lawyer, an accountant, a dentist, a medical professional, they tend to have their degrees and certificates up on the wall. That's a sign of ability. For me, I have a bachelor's degree in computer science. I have a master's in education. So how does that help me prove that I've had a high STEM signal? Well, I also have prior accomplishments, won about $600 million in competitive bids, and I have an 82% win rate on proposals. So those things demonstrate my ability in the marketplace. That's the second attribute. All right, now let's say I pull up to my dental office and I walk inside for my appointment and I see a waiting room that looks like this. Well, that tells me that my dentist is not capable of matching their commitments to their patients. And we call that reliability. They can't meet the commitments that they made in terms of scheduling in this case. So this is the real lobby that Scripps Rocks Dental used. And in the 5 years that I was their patient, I can probably count on one hand the number of people I ran into in the lobby. I never sat for more than a minute or two. I went into the lobby, they were ready for me, they called me into the back. They had precision control over their schedule. That's reliability. Honest One Care. Imagine, if you will, that every time they told me my car would be ready at 3:30 or 4:30 after work and I went over there, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't get the part in, you have to come back tomorrow morning for your car. That would be a sign of unreliability. It wouldn't matter how able they are and how engaged they are. If they couldn't return my car when they promised, then I'd eventually rule them as untrustworthy and I'd stop going there. Okay? But in both cases, they met those three criteria. The fourth and final criteria, imagine if the mechanic said to me, hey, in order to control the temperature of your engine block, you need a new water pump, when all I really needed was a thermostat. Well, that would tell me they were being insincere. They were saying one thing, but having a private conversation about something completely different. So we call that sincerity. So that's the fourth of the four attributes: engagement, ability, reliability, and sincerity. So at the beginning I asked, can you be trusted? The answer is to trust your ears. Engagement, ability, reliable, and sincere. So here's some final thoughts as I wrap up this very short lesson. Trust is not an assertion of fact. It's not a binary trait that you're either trustworthy or you're not. And it's not a moral judgment about your character. You don't call somebody trustworthy as if it's a moral judgment. What it is It's an assessment of somebody's abilities and their engagement and their reliability and their sincerity. It's observable attributes and it's domain specific. So I have a brother who's a certified professional accountant. He has a degree in accounting and he has a certification from the state of New Jersey saying he's a CPA. Now, I would trust him to do my personal tax return, but I'm not going to trust him to defend me in a lawsuit in a courtroom. So I trust him in certain domains of action. The last thing to realize is trust is repairable. If you've broken trust with somebody, the way to repair it is to diagnose which of the 4 attributes was trust broken, remind the individual of the other 3 attributes that you've kept strong, and find ways to repair the 4th attribute. In Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about making deposits in the bank of trust, right? So if you have made a lot of deposits in all of your attributes, and then you happen to break one of the attributes of broken trust, if you've got a lot of deposits elsewhere, it's easier to repair the trusting relationship, okay? All right, so you'll notice I use the words assertion and assessment in this talk. So in lesson 4, we talked about what those specific words mean. Assertions are factual evidence that can be proven that are generally accepted truths that we have are universal, whereas an assessment is an opinion and it's either grounded or ungrounded. So in the description block, Lesson 4, you'll see the link for Lesson 4. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go watch it. If you have seen it, you can get a quick refresher, okay? All right, so for your final reflections, I want you to consider the following questions. How are you engaged in your job or career? What degrees, what certifications, what continuing education do you have to show that you're engaged in your job or career? What proof do you have of your abilities? I mentioned my degrees earlier, but also my accomplishments. So what accomplishments do you have? What projects and programs have you completed? Have they been on time or ahead of schedule, ahead of budget? So can others depend on your reliability? So I'm a corporate trainer and I have this one client and I always joke with them about this. So I have been teaching for them for almost 9 years. And every on-site class, I have yet to start on time. We're supposed to start at 8 a.m. They know this. I've had hundreds of students, dozens of classes with them. Never, not once have we ever started at 8 o'clock. It's usually around 8:05, 8:10 the first day. And they tend to stroll in and some are still working on their, they're sending out their little notes or they're, trying to get settled in. Now, I have this discussion with them. Look, if you can't be on time for a training class, how is a customer going to expect you to be on time with delivery of a major report or a product or a service? So it's the little things that count when we talk about can others depend on your reliability. The notion that you show up on time, ready to go whenever you're expected to. Vince Lombardi was a famous American football coach back in the 50s and 60s, largely recognized as one of the best of all time. He won 3 world championships with the U.S. Green Bay Packers. And one of the things he required of his team, he said, whenever we have a team meeting, you're required to be ready to go at least 15 minutes prior to the meeting, or else you're going to be considered late. So it was jokingly referred to as Lombardi time. You had to be 15 minutes ahead of when the meeting was scheduled. That's a measure of reliability. Can you show up on time, every time, or early? And then lastly, do the words that you say publicly match the private conversations you're having in the back of your head? If they don't, you're being insincere. So do your words match your actions? This is probably the toughest one to relay. So how would I know that my dentist was being sincere with me? Well, every time I leave the dental office, one of the things they often say to me is, I really wish you would brush and floss more, right? That goes against their financial interests. If I brushed and flossed less, I would wind up seeing them more for more expensive procedures. So one way you can measure sincerity is when somebody is telling you something that goes against their interests. Okay? Well, here's my example of sincerity. I'm doing this channel for free. You'll notice I'm not taking any funds from promoters, or I don't collect any ad revenue, at least not yet. I'm doing this out of my desire to help the next generation of STEM educated. So my words are matching my actions. I'm not being paid to put this channel out. All right, so those are the things that you can take away from the lesson today. Please reflect on them. If you found this content valuable, I would love if you like and subscribe, of course. That helps the YouTube algorithm promote this to more like you. But at the end of the day, again, to increase your STEM signal, the best thing you can do is have a human-to-human approach about this. Recommend it to your friends and colleagues. Talk to them about it. Send them a link to the channel. Let them know that you found this valuable. All right, that's all I have for today. Again, Jeff Goldfinger with the STEM Signal. And until next time, enjoy your summer and keep your STEM signal above the noise.